want to introduce, we have two guest speakers today, and as usual, I check with the presenters. Oh, before I forget, let's all wish Daryl a happy birthday this morning.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Daryl.
birthday. Yeah. Let's
Another
sing.
one bites the dust.
So, having sidetracked a little, at least I didn't forget before he had to go do his other duties. As usual, I ask people what information would be good for introductions for you. And if I listed all the stuff that both Mike and Joe sent me, they wouldn't have time to present. But we'll try to go. I tried to summarize these. Our first presenter, or our one of our two presenters, the first one I'm going to talk about, started calling in the early 90s. He was a music teacher in the schools and then started calling doing that. I'm sure he'll fill us in more on this stuff. Then he started calling for adult clubs also, and all of a sudden got too busy doing teaching music and calling, and had to make a choice between the two and quit teaching. He's been full-time calling, started full-time calling in 1972. That number looks familiar. I think I was alive then. He's called in 49 states, 7 Canadian provinces, calling for beginners, obviously, if he's talking about schools, through C4. Not as obvious. That's beyond my memory capabilities. Has taught many caller schools for about 40 years, has run a note service, recorded on Gren. I know Gren, but I wrote Green. Green River was on Gren. And FTC, full-time caller, which is a sub-label of Gren. Originally, was it from Toronto, Joe?
Originally outside of Rochester, New York.
Right. Oh, you were in Rochester. Okay.
Yeah.
And now is living in Alberta, Canada. And also calls in Florida in the winters. So I should say, let's have a hand for Joe Uebelacker, who is nice to have you joining us, Joe.
Yeah.
And before I'm going to let you talk, I want to talk about our second presenter, who has had lots of experience in this field also, has started up calling as a teen around 1960 also. Been calling for over 60 years. Went to became a full-time caller in 1974. Traveled for 40 years. Now he's slowing down. He's only calling for 5 local clubs. I don't know if that's slowing down, Mike. Also has calls a lot in schools, which he's calling a business because he's really made a business of calling in schools, which we're going to talk about today. Has taught beginners classes every year since 1972. Calls mainstream through A2 and has dabbled in C1 in the past. I like the way you put that, Mike. I used to call C2, but yeah, it was dabbling, not
Exactly.
Has recorded on Silver Sounds Records. Lives in Spencerport, which is near Rochester. You guys must have known each other back then.
We did.
By the way, just as an aside, how's Betty Carmen doing?
She's doing real well. She had some health problems. She's not really dancing or cueing anymore, but still keep in contact with her.
For those of you that don't know, Betty Carmen is the wife of a recently passed away caller named Jerry Carmen. And Jerry helped me get started an awful lot. We used to do dances together where he'd do the patter and I'd do the singing call. He helped me a lot in the very, very, very beginning.
We had 3 local callers and 1 round dance cure a few years ago pass away in the same year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
And unlike Joe, who winters in Florida, Mike has chosen to winter in Arizona and has for the last 5 years. enjoying lots of good dancing, I think, more than calling, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I call a little bit, but not much. We go out to dance mostly.
so let's have a big hand for Mike Callahan.
Thank you.
And now, with what time is left, let's let you guys. Oh, the presentation, the topic today. We've had people talk about this in the past and bring it up, and calling a school here and there now and then. But to have successful, continual, repetitive programs in schools, there was a lot of interest. I've called for 1 or 2 college clubs, but never a regular program in teaching in schools, and have tried. This should be informative to me. Whoops! Oh darn! I got 2 more people in the waiting room. Okay. As I say, I had too many things going on here. And I still have to figure out how to let Joe share his screen. But go ahead, Joe. You can. Joe,
Yes. Oh,
take
can you hear
over.
me? Okay. Yeah. So how many have called in schools? Just show of hands. You got 1, 2, 3. Mel and Bill. Okay. And hopefully all those experiences were positive. Um, some aren't always positive. Some leave you thinking, I'm never going to do that again. Other than that, um, now Mike made much more of a business out of it than I did. I sort of got in by the back door because I was already teaching in school, and then from there because I was part of the state teachers association and things like that. Um, it was easy for me to get into schools, and I did the New York State Phys Ed conferences each year, and like I would do the Friday night dance for the teachers, and to try to stir up their interest. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we'd do clinics all day on how to present this to the kids. And from there, of course, that led to many more bookings to do it in the schools. Mike, what was your situation?
I had quite a unique situation here in Western New York because New York State required a rhythms and dance unit for all elementary and middle school kids. That was part of the phys ed program. And a lot of schools in this area were square dancing already. So I didn't have too much of a problem getting into schools. There was one gentleman who was doing a school about 50 miles away from me, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing it. And so I did. It was a 100-mile round trip, but I was starting to call full time, and I was glad to get the business. So I would drive 50 miles, call 8 40-minute sessions, and drive home and maybe have a dance that night. But because of this, phys ed teachers have a big network. And like Joe says, they have these conferences, not only local conferences, but state conferences. When they see something they like, they tell other phys ed people about it. So I was doing this for this particular year. The next year, he invited some other of his phys ed friends to come and watch. And I got a little bit more business than that. And pretty soon I said, maybe this is some kind of thing I should look into. So this was before the internet. And what I did for quite a few years is I would go through the phone book each year and get all the area schools, probably 200 at least, and send a little resume to each one, mail them snail mail, talking about my experience, about the benefits of square dancing and so forth. And I would start getting business from this. Okay. So it wasn't as though I had to, approach a school and say, do you want to do square dancing and all this type of thing? It was already there. And they liked the music I used. The sound was a lot better. The kids were more interested in it. And from there, it just kind of snowballed. So that's really how I got into the school systems. By the way, we'd like to, when we make the presentation here, we want to, if possible, keep all the questions to the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
How have you done, Don? Have you got us in there yet?
Yeah.
there we go. Good. All I have to do is, oh, there we are. Here comes the share.
Yeah, you have to do your part.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, let me put it up to the slide show. Okay, so between Mike and myself, we'll share the pages there. I might as well, I guess, since I'm talking, I might as well start the first one. These are the job requirements. This is like talking from the HR department sort of thing. Okay, so for this job, you have to be able to travel, set up and start classes sometime starting at 7 a.m. Okay, after that, then you have to be able to stand for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours or more at a time. And you also have to be able to talk and call constantly for 4 to 6 hours plus. On a sideline there, sometimes you won't get lunch because they forgot that you eat food as well. So you know, be prepared to have a sandwich in a bag or something, not peanut butter, because that's, you know, you got to watch out for that. All those kinds of things that we have to look out for. Also, you have to be able to not rely on site calling. If you do site calling, you know, try to trust a bunch of 5-year-olds. Anyhow, if you're going to do singing calls, which they want to do, you have to use, design them using 5 basics or less. There are some calls, singing calls out there that you can use, like the sailor song, you know, head lead across over by the opposite stand, that kind of a thing. But very few, very, very little. Although Dick Ledger did produce an awful lot of very easy basic calls, and so did I think Bob Osgood. People out in the West Coast did quite a number of ones. But you're better off doing your thing. Okay. Also, you have to not be fussy about styling or timing, because they're going to do their own thing, and if you want them to do everything properly, you know, stick to adults. Also, you have to be able not to be bored teaching or repeating basics over and over for days, because that's basically what's going to happen. Now, how do I get to my next screen? Just there we go.
Can I say something about that too, Joe?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. If you could go back a minute.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay. You got to make sure you use your voice right, because if you tend to get lose your voice after an hour or two because you're constantly talking, you're going to have real problems towards the end of the day. So voice is very important. How you use your voice, your diaphragm, that type of thing, when you're in the schools. Okay. And as Joe said, you can't be fussy about styling or timing. If you get upset, the kids will know in 10 seconds that you're upset. So you got to kind of be real even-keeled, even-tempered. You got to relate to the kids, talk to them when they come up after you start calling and they ask about your equipment. You got to relate to them, have a smile on your face, and that type of thing. So it's real important to have a good personality like that if you're interested in going into the schools. Okay.
Next. There you go.
Want me to do this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's real good to have children's dances or simple line dances that can be taught in less than 5 minutes. Baby Shark, good one. Cupid Shuffle, Chicken Dance, heads, shoulders, knees, and toes. They still do the hokey pokey and they love it, especially the little ones. So all these things should be in your toolbox when you go into schools. And maybe if you're working with the older kids, have some of the more current line dances they like. You have to be able to design a teaching program for special ed kids. A lot of times when I went to schools, one of the classes was a special ed class. And they would come in and, we might do some simple line dances. Most of the time they had aids. Each kid had an aid. So it was real easy to set up a square and do some real, circle left, circle right, forward, up and back, and that type of thing. And they loved it. I love working with special ed kids. You got to be able to design your own teaching order to coincide with the grade level the students you're working with. You know, we all have our Color Lab basic and mainstream list, but a lot of times you have to skip around that list in order to be successful with teaching kids, especially the little ones. Okay. Able to use modern music. Most of the kids, especially when you get up into the high schools, middle schools, they love to hear more of the rock tunes of modern music. But once in a while, they like to hear some of the traditional music also. Okay. Because for them, that's square dancing. Again, able to relate to the level of the students you're working with, K through 12. And you got to design programs. And after you've done this, you know, for a couple of years, you almost can design your own program, knowing what the level of kids that you're working with. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, one of the things too about your voice, it's the same thing as we are with adults. You want to stay away from cold water. I know it feels really good on the throat, but it constricts it, takes the blood away from the throat, and you're in trouble. You'll get in trouble. We won't talk about the alcoholic disadvantages, unfortunately, but cold water is out. So also, you know, you might think about having milk for breakfast or whatever, things like that. So anyhow, on marketing, it says marketing 1. Okay, so the use of the school website, staff emails to get into schools. Mike will tell you more about that one. But networking, talk to teachers, friends, dancers about the best way to get into their school and who to contact. And if someone gives you a contact and whatnot, do follow up. Communication on all fronts, whether it's square dancing or whatever, communicate. You know, and do it right away. Don't leave it go. Jump right on these things. Otherwise, either it passes you by or people think you're not interested. You want to make up resumes and send them out. Some schools, you know, they might hesitate a little bit when you're not a teacher already, but you know, let them know you are a teacher, because if you've been teaching adults and whatnot, you're a teacher. Check out teacher in-service workshops, phys ed conferences. Now, most schools, the Teachers Association will have a teachers in-service workshop. Some will have one once a month. Depends on the school and what they like to do. Find out who's in charge of the workshops and let them know that you'd be willing to come in and show the teachers what it's about. Have them get up and do dancing. There's, you know, it used to be with many of the older teachers, the attitude was, you know, I've been teaching for 30 years. What can you tell me? Well, let's do it. We'll see your left from your right. And you'll find that many times teachers are not any better than the kids, myself included. Okay, do you need a degree to teach square dance in schools? No, you don't. But again, you'll have to check what they want for credentials. You may have to get you most likely will have to get a police check on that to go into the schools. You know, does your state or province require phys ed programs to have a dance or rhythm unit? Most of them, somehow or another, especially around 3rd or 4th grade, require some form of dance based on their civics sort of a program. Anything to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes the music and phys ed programs can kind of get together and have you come into the school, because, you know, this is part of music also, right? The kids have to know, it helps them know rhythms and that type of thing. As far as the school websites, if you Google a school nowadays, almost always you can come up with the staff emails. And when I was doing these resumes, I never, ever sent it to administrators. I always sent it to the phys ed teachers themselves, because they're more or less in the trenches, if you want to say it that way. So what I would do with these resumes, you know, I'd introduce myself. I'd tell them the benefits of square dancing, teamwork, mind-body coordination, listening skills, the social value, the exercise, the music, dancing to the beat. And one of the most important things is that kids don't have to be an athlete to square dance. Okay. Most kids that are shy and not into sports can be successful square dancing. And again, the special ed, you could emphasize that you have a program for special ed kids also on these particular resumes that you send. So, but send them to the teachers. Don't send them to the administrators because they get tossed out. Joe mentioned about teacher in-service workshops. A lot of phys ed areas do have at least one every year somewhere in their area. And if you can get into that and, do like a one-night party at their phys ed conferences, this will help a lot to get you into the schools. Again, you need a degree. New York State, you don't need a degree to teach square dancing in schools. I don't know about some of the other states. But now you do have to be fingerprinted by the police in order to get into the schools. Go ahead.
Okay, years.
So I think I mentioned how I got started pretty much with that one school. As you go to the schools, you might be able to hand out promotional material to the phys ed people that are there. Okay. Does your promotional material appeal to your audience? Well, you got to have something that appeals to the phys ed type of a program, some of the things that I mentioned before. Okay. Do you explain the advantage of having you to teach square dance other than it might be fun? Well, again, we have all these different things that especially phys ed people are really interested in: the teamwork, the mind-body coordination, the exercise, and so forth. Okay. Who do you approach? Again, try to approach the teachers more than anybody else, because if they would like what you're doing, they can approach the administrators as far as like funding and that type of thing. But really, approach the teachers first. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so now are you ready to teach square dancing in schools? Do you have unlimited patience? Okay, and that's what it's going to take. We almost could put that on top of every slide we have there, because it's going to take patience like crazy. There's always going to be the kid or kids who are going to do goofy things. Don't be afraid of the school, like, the toughest high school in your city or your neighborhood. Many times those kids are the best kids for square dancing. They may look a little tough, a little rough, scary, intimidating, but many times, as long as you're treating them as equals, they step right up to the plate. In Ontario, when I was living in Ontario, I had a high school that was the toughest one in the city, and those kids were fantastic. They were self-policing. They took care of anybody that caused trouble. In other words, they had my back, so that's good. So the other thing is, do you have a plan? Make sure you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you have nothing to deviate from to start with. So, like, what are you going to teach first? Are you going to circle left, couple one, couple two, couple three, whatever? How are you going to get them paired up? Are you going to do like a grand march kind of a thing? Are you going to just leave it up to the teachers? I know Mike would usually have the teachers get them in groups. Sometimes the teachers like to do that because they know who not to put into a particular square with another kid. And what do you tell them first? What's don't start with a big history lesson or you lose them right away. The trick is, and it's the same with adults, get them moving. As soon as they're moving, then you can start doing things. Where are we going from there? Okay, yeah, Mike, you want to talk about getting them squared up and everything like that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Again, patience. And if you don't have patience, the kids pick up on it real quick. So this is something that you really got to look into yourself about. Do I like to work with kids? Do I have patience with kids? A lot of times, if you have kids of your own, you know what I'm talking about. what are you going to teach first? How are you going to get them paired up? Okay, a lot of times what I did is a lot of demos. The kids would sit down on the floor. This is more or less, elementary. I'd introduce myself. They'd all be in a circle. I'd approach the teacher and I'd say, now, well, first of all, I'd say, I need 8 kids who are really good listeners, who can really follow directions. And of course, everyone would raise their hand. But then the teachers would pick out, of course, who they thought would, do a good job. We'd get them in a square. We'd, for the real little kids, they'd say, how many sides does the square have? And they'd say 4, So I'd introduce the square part of it. Some of the teachers would put X's on the floor where the kids were supposed to stand in the square. We'd say, bow to your partner, bow to your corner. We tell them who couple number 1, 2, 3, 4. We'd say, number 1, bow to your partner, bow to your corner, number 2, and you go around that way. Number 1, go forward, up and back. Number 2, go forward, up and back. Number 3, go forward, up and back. You do it that way. So these are real basic things that you got to do with especially with little kids. The bigger kids, again, up to maybe 4th or 5th grade, the teachers will get them into squares. After that, they'd pretty much say, okay, let's just, you guys are old enough now. Let's get our squares together. And of course, they're used to doing this already from previous years. All right. And that helps a lot. And, of course, some kids would sit back. So the teacher would, get them into squares, that type of thing. One thing that I'm not a disciplinarian, the teacher is. So, you can put up with a kid, having a little fun here and there. But if you had a kid that was really having issues, I would say right over the mic to the teacher, hey, could you talk to this kid a minute? And, leave it up to them for as far as the discipline is concerned. And that I didn't bother with discipline at all. So, but I think that's about it for that slide.
Okay.
Oh, is this mine?
Yeah, that's yours, Mike.
Okay. What's your ultimate goal? It's to have the kids have a good time, be successful. When they have a good time and they are successful at what they do, they enjoy it. And the next year you go, or the next time you go, they're a lot more accepting of you and that type of thing. Okay. Have you ever thought about the mindset of the kids that you're dealing with? Excellent. Some kids are there saying, I don't want to do this. Some kids are there saying, hey, this looks like fun. So you're going to have a lot of different mindsets of the kids as you go in. The main goal for you is to get everybody up, dancing and having a good time. How about potential follow-up? Once you get done with the school, you might email the teacher, say, hey, thank you very much for having me in. Hope it was a success. I'm now starting to book dates for next year. If you're interested, please give me a call or email me, that type of thing. A lot of teachers, phys ed teachers, start planning their next year's schedule around June or July. So this is an excellent time to follow up with teachers that you've already, and kids and classes that you've already been to in schools. Okay. Do you have extra material for teachers to use as preparatory and post-event units? Well, you can bring in the list of basics. I believe there's some videos on the internet now that you can have them Google. There's a lot of material out there for teachers. Okay. Post-event units. Many schools I went into, I'd be there for a week. And then on the Friday night, they'd have a family night. And this is where the kids would bring their parents. We'd do, square dancing, line dancing. And it was really good that the parents saw what the kids learned that week. A lot of them were just amazed. And so this did well for the school also. So this is something that you might suggest to the teacher. Say, hey, I can be here for a week. Why don't we have a family night on Friday night? And They bring their parents, they do some line dancing, do square dancing, and it really does well for the school. Okay, Joe.
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple of things off of that too. To get them to listening, which is our main goal on all of the square dancing with kids, adults, you name it, is to pay attention to what the caller is saying rather than to guess at what's coming next. And when you do that, the very simple thing is like Mike said, especially with little kids, square identification. Couple one, go up to the middle and back. Couple two, go up to the middle and back. Couple three, go up to the middle and back. They're expecting couple four now. So you say couple number two or one, something else. And of course, couple four will do it, and all the kids, they all say, "No, you're four," and they all get, in a little tizzy, but they have fun with that. So you can do that from time to time. Don't overdo it, but it does give them subconsciously, if not anything else, the idea that, oh, he can change it any way he wants. So pay attention. I also, at some point there, do explain the difference between traditional barn dancing type, visiting couple thing, and how, you push the promotion of, but you kids are much, better than just doing visiting couple. You're out to, we can have you all doing something all at once. Like Lori said, when she did the grand square thing, these are great things to make them feel really good. As far as extra material for the teachers to use, I would always leave them a copy of, and by the way, if you can't see it, I don't know if that's backwards. That's a book that I wrote for kids in school. Okay, it's square dancing for kids of all ages, and it's good for adults too, or seniors or whatever, nursing home type things. It has the information in the book actually, right from what to say from the very first thing, like, drills to learn swear identification is all, every line that they want to say. I've even had kids who think they want to do it. They say, well, I can do that. I give them the mic, I give them, open up the book, I say, there you go, all you got to do is read it. And they'll call, and some of them do quite well. So I have that available if anybody's interested eventually. Let me just go to the next page here.
One of the things that I was just thinking of that is kind of neat with especially little kids is having a Simon Says square dance.
Oh, yeah.
So you say, Simon says, bow to your partner, bow to your corner. Oh, no, Simon didn't say that, and they all start laughing. Simon says, circle left, and Simon says, circle right. Simon says, go forward, up and back. And then you might put another column without the Simon Says, and they forget, and they all start laughing. And that's kind of a neat little thing.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't done that one. I like that. I might do that with one of the adult clubs. Whoops. Let me go back one here. Whoops. I'm having a time with my mouse here. Let me go back. I'm going backwards. Okay. So what's the difference between teaching a class and teaching for a one-off event? Okay. Well, if you're teaching for a class, of course, you may, like, with Mike, you may get kids in schools that keep getting you back, but you still have to start over at the beginning with most of them. It's just that with the kids that know most everything to start with, things will go faster. And the biggest thing is these are one-off events that we're doing really. So each time can be somewhat different. It doesn't really matter, but you're not expecting them to remember from, necessarily from day one to day two. You may get other kids who are out the first time, so you have to go over things. That's where the patience comes in again. You have to consider what the age level is. Are you going to teach them how to do a swing like you do adults? I usually didn't. I would do that towards the high school level because once you get to, don't forget that, around age 7 and 8, they don't want to touch each other to start with. By the time they're in grade 9 and 10, you can't keep them from touching each other. By
That's
grade
true.
11 and 12, they're much better. You know, you can go ahead and teach them how to swing properly and make it fun, because there's that centrifugal force that they can utilize, and they like to do that. And they're full of energy. I mean, at all ages. But so that's the kind of a thing. Um, do you have a list of calls to present? Make sure you have your list of calls. See in what order are you going to teach them in? You know, one call will lead to another call, to another call. Look at it, and as Mike said, look at it from their angle as a new dancer, just like you do with adults. What is that person thinking when you say, you know, if you're teaching you turn back, are you going to say couple 1 and 3 pass through and now turn around? Well, turn around is a 360-degree thing, not 180. You turn back is 180. So you have to be careful, because you're going to get somebody there, and the kids are really good at this. They will catch you up on semantics really easily, and it can be fun. I mean, you know, they can trip you up. Be patient, accept it, and have fun. Um, and the idea of what order you teach the calls and why do you teach them in that order? Do you have, like when you teach, if you're going to teach ladies chain, are you going to teach it all at once? You know, the head two ladies pull bow with the right and the boys do this and that. Well, no. Maybe you've done wheel around first. That's the action. And then pretty soon a wheel around with some hands. Then you can get into, you know, that's called courtesy turn. And eventually then you can say, now we can do the ladies chain, you know, and you know, use some shtick with this. You know, head two ladies. You know, we're gonna have you change. Go over to that other guy and be his partner. You know, and guys, you got to pay attention, because she's gonna pull by and she's gonna come to you, and then she's gonna see someone else in some other square that looks prettier, and she may just leave the square. So you got to rein her back in. Do the courtesy turn. So, you know, have some reasoning for what you're doing. And how strictly do you adhere to the rules? Well, you know, sometimes you have to bend the rules to get something done, and that's okay. You know, they're not going to become professional square dancers like our adults. You know, nobody's going to pay them, so they don't care. They want to have fun, and they got their energy. They're going to keep moving. Uh, I think Daryl, oh, gee, name escapes me. Daryl from the West Coast put on a YouTube a video of some of the kids he was just teaching, and you can see the energy. You can't control. You can't rein that in. I did one with Rensselaer Polytech in New York, and these are kids kind of like the MIT student type. And after 45 minutes of running them at about 150 beats per minute, I said, okay, let's take a break. Kid in front of me turns around and says, why, are you tired? And I said, oh, that's a challenge. So, you know, you got to be ready to jump on it and go to it. So, okay, Mike, your turn.
Yeah,
You want the
I
next
have.
slide?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Elsa? Okay. I have different calls that I use with different age groups. Usually kindergarten and first grade, you use about the same calls, and maybe second. Third and fourth grades, you can advance a little bit, you know, and use different calls. Fifth and sixth, you can more or less get up. I start using grand square usually about fifth grade, if it's a real good fifth grade, but probably sixth. And then seventh and eighth is when you can really start, you know, teaching more. And the high schools, you can do about anything with them. But I try to group age groups that way with different lists of calls. Okay. And that seems to work out pretty good, those groups of age groups. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
This
okay.
one mine?
Yeah, this one's yours. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of things got to find out from the schools. When do you start? Where do you park? A lot of them have parking lots that are just for certain students, and it's not, if you park in a teacher's parking, you might get towed away. You got to find out about all of that stuff. What are the school protocols for an outside person? Do we have to have ID? A lot of schools, in fact, all schools nowadays, you have to show ID. and they'll usually give you a badge to go into the schools, or a visitor's thing. You need police clearance. Here in New York State, again, you have to be fingerprinted before you go into any schools. Okay. When do you get paid? Well, you can talk a lot about getting paid, but most of the schools will have a voucher or something like that, and you might not get paid for 3 months. Okay. How do you get paid? Usually by check. A lot of the schools, who does pay? Well, some have budgets for visiting artists. Some of the schools I work with, the student council paid for it. Some of the schools, the parent teacher association paid for it. So there's a lot of different ways that schools will pay visiting consultants. That's what you are. You're a consultant for that particular school. What do you do if you get booked back in? As far as, well, of course, you take it if you can. But really, when you get booked back in, that means you've been a success for that school. Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, yeah. All of that he said, that's good. Kind of backtrack on one of the things I mentioned about the difference between teaching in class and teaching a one-off event. Actually, for either one of them, the music you use is important. I'm not sure if that comes up in another slide, although I put these slides together. But you definitely want to use music that is, when you're teaching, that is very low key. Not a bunch of rattly stuff, not a bunch of fiddle music, not anything that makes them feel like they've got to dance and propel forward. Something like Big Sombrero, that's a singing, I know that's a singing call, but it's a very low key record. But it's got a bit of a melody, or something that's rhythmic. Definitely, again, you don't want to do boiling cabbages, or something they're going to dance whether you say something or not. So you have to watch out what you choose that way. That works the same for adults, of course. Okay. Whoops. Did I go down? No. Well, let me see if I can get this to go down. Oh, there we are. Okay. Things to think about. Yes, you'll most likely need that police check clearance. Anyhow, use of demos in teaching. That's always a good thing, especially if you see a square where, two couples are doing something quite well, and you want to have the others do a show and tell. You just have to be careful not to single out anybody. And boy, my philosophy is don't ever single someone out for doing something bad. Okay. You'll lose confidence in everybody.
Same with adults.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You don't want to do that. You want to have a short, and I mean short history of square dancing and the recreational aspect of it in today's world. Let them know that you can go anywhere in the world and dance this stuff. Once you know a particular set of calls, there's cruises, there's holiday weekends. Do you need a wireless mic? In the old days, before we had wireless mics, no, we didn't need it. You don't necessarily need it, but it can really help. And again, do you have follow-up material for the teachers to use? Do you have music for them? Some old records, perhaps, or I used to give them, dating myself, cassettes of some of the teach material from Sets in Order, so they could, continue to do it. It probably was illegal, but you know what? It kept them going. Do you have pre-session info material for the teachers? In other words, before you arrive, it's really good to let the teachers know what you're planning on doing, how you do it, so they can, participate and help. As Mike will tell you too, you'll get a situation where you have these kids. Say you're doing all grade 5s in a big school, so period after period you got the grade 5s or whatever the situation is, and all of a sudden you see squares full of a lot of adults, or kids from the higher grades if there's a high school involved. Kids will skip classes, staff will skip free time, and come in and dance. Some of them will bring in their class because they say, this is educational. We want our kids in here too. All of a sudden, you have twice as many people in there that you bargained for. So let the teachers know that, you're fine with that. Now, if you're not fine with it, you want to tell them that too. And the last one there, be neatly dressed and groomed. It's best not to show up in your jeans that you just painted the barn with. Um, have your hair combed and use the mouthwash so you'll know right away if someone comes up to talk to you and they start backing up as soon as you start talking that you got bad breath. So you want those are very important things as a presenter. Okay, Mike, I'm sure you got something to say here well, you did see something about the demos, but go ahead. Your turn.
Yeah, demos are very important in schools. I mean, you can't just stand up there with your equipment. You got to get out in the square with the kids and demo. I'll get right in the square. I'll say to a kid, take your spot for a minute, and we, show you the different calls and that type of thing. And the kids really kind of like it when the caller gets in their square. I mean, they think that's really something. Okay. Again, as Joe said, a lot of kids think of the square dancing as in the barn and the hay and the cows and the chickens and all that type of thing. It's a recreation, and you got to tell them about the different aspects: cruises, square dance vacations, square dance weekends, that type of thing. So they know it's not just a hokey type of activity. Wireless mic, definitely got to have a wireless mic. I use it all the time. Be neatly dressed and groomed. Don't, as Joe says, don't come in jeans with holes in them and a baseball cap and that type of thing. Even little kids know when somebody looks professional, and you got to look professional even in the schools. Okay, a lot of the kids don't look professional anymore, but you being a leader and a caller and working with the kids, you got to be neatly dressed and groomed. Okay.
Yeah, by the same token, I don't know that you want to show up in your square dance outfit.
Exactly. Right.
It's kind of hokey, huh?
Yeah.
Even today, you got to watch out who you're calling for.
Business casual,
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can get this to go down one here. Okay, got to use my mouse. There we go. There's yours, Mike.
Okay. How do you price yourself? Well, this is something that, let me give you an example. The first school I ever did, I drove 100-mile round trip, and the school said, yes, we'd love to have you for a week, teach 8 classes a day, and we'll give you a substitute teacher's pay, which was $50 a day. And that's what I made. And I drove, 500 miles every day, taught 8 classes for $50 a day. But I was glad to get it. Okay. How do you sell yourself? Okay. Well, you sell yourself with the success that you have with each school. And that pretty much sells yourself when you're a success, when the kids enjoy it, when the teachers enjoy it, and when they say, will you come back next year? A lot of schools will have an invoice already made up for you. So, again, don't expect to get paid when you get done. It's usually, 2 to 3 months, because they have to go through an accounting system and a budget system and all that type of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, sometimes all they want is on a piece of paper, square dance calling for, whatever date it was, and the price that you've agreed to or not, whatever it happens to be. So that's not too much. And let me get the page down. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay. Whoops. Let's go the right way. There we go. Okay, so who pays you? It might be a school budget, it might be a phys ed budget, music budget, PTA, whatever. The other thing is, would you do a free gig to get your foot in the door? That's another thing to think about. can you bring dancers into a student assembly for a demo? Maybe you're part of a community activities assembly program, something like that. And again, you'd want people to be dressed in different attire. Again, business casual is good. You might have one couple come in with their outfit. I would not do that myself, as far as having the attire, because even today with adults, I feel that we're driving more people away by saying you should let them get involved first, and of course the kids aren't going to get involved the way adults do. So with the adults, yeah, we'll worry about that when that comes. Let them know that it's a possibility if that's their thing. But with the kids, no. No. And also, we never did touch on this, Mike. The idea that the girls can do the boys' part, and the boys can do the girls' part. It does not matter. It isn't a girls' boys. It's a bow and bell thing. Okay. And some of the kids, I've had kids switch parts even. So, uh, let it go for what it is. Mike, you have anything to add to that whole list?
It pretty much covers what I say also. Remember one school I went to, I had a certain fee, and I had gone to the school, a number of years, and the next year things were being cut out of the budget and all that stuff. So the kids had a fundraiser to raise money to pay me for the second day. I mean, that's how much they really enjoyed it. So fundraisers, again, like PTA. And when I stopped doing the schools, mostly the PTAs were paying for it. Sometimes some of the schools had a phys ed budget for it, but most of the time it was a PTA, schools, student council, and that type of thing. And again, would you be willing to do a freebie just to get your foot in the door? That might work. You might say that on your resume, or when you're trying to get into the schools. Hey, I'll come in and do a class for you, just to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think that probably does it. Well, one other thing about how to get into the schools, of course, is to do other events as well that the community asks for, Girl Guides or the brownies or whatnot, like the father-daughter events, because many times those people, the dad might be the principal, or they might be the phys ed teacher themselves, or the music teacher, or whatever, and they go and they have a good time with their kid, and they say, wow, this would be great to do in the schools. The way you do it is so much better than those old 78 records I have, where you can't even understand the caller, and it's weird stuff. We don't even know what they're talking about. Who's the girl from Arkansas, and who's your call? What is this stuff? So do those events if you want to get involved, and go from there. And I think that's probably the last one. Yes. And okay, so I'm going to do the stop share so you can see everybody good. There we go. And Bill has his hand up.
Yeah, you mentioned no boys or girls. How do you differentiate the left hand and the right hand dancer? Apples and oranges or something similar?
Yeah. Yeah, the uglies and the pretties. I don't know. I use the term boys and girls, but just to say that it's um, because the girls can do the boys part. Left hand dancer, right hand dancer, if you want to say that. The lower grades, they don't even know left hand from right hand. Uh, so who knows? It's something that you will do yourself and figure out. But I wouldn't get all hung up on certainly I don't use bows and bells. I mean, even adults don't know what you're talking about when you talk about bows and bells half the time.
A lot of times the teachers would give pennies, the colored things to the kids. One side would be red, one side would be blue. Say all the reds do this, all the blues do that type of thing. And that worked out pretty good.
So before we get into discussion any further, since we're so close to the hour, I want to do the official thank yous, and then we'll continue with discussion. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, Dan, for providing the link, and hopefully you get a chance to watch this because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. A special thanks to Mike Callahan and Joe Uebelacker for the great presentation. I know I learned a lot of things I wasn't expecting to learn, which is cool. I wish I'd picked your brains 30 years ago. I know a lot of you guys have questions about that you want to follow or dig deeper into some of these. I know several of you have, when you raised your hand, who's called in the schools before, have done some extensive things and might want to add stuff to it. So we'll start with. Oh, and also again, if you've only designated an hour for hanging around your computer this morning, feel free to go without feeling you're rude for it. So, Joni's been waving her hand. So why don't you go continue?
Okay. Two things. When I taught at the elementary school, I asked the teachers to put a green strip of paper around their wrist or a blue strip, because I had girls with girls, boys with boys, girls with boys, backwards. It didn't matter. If you were green, my brain said G for girl. If you were blue, my brain said B for boy. And that way greens could do something, blues could do something, and I could keep it straight in my head that way. And that worked perfectly. As for music, I use Hakuna Matata, Bridge Over the River Kwai, which the kids thought of as Ants Go Marching To by Two, and The Lion King. And those went over really well with the younger kids. And that's basically all I wanted to say.
Baby Shark Hoedown on Silver Sounds is great.
I'll have to look that one up.
Go ahead.
Bill, you've got your electronic hand up.
It works better. Hey guys, Mike and Joe, I want to. You're bringing back so many good memories for me. As I've told several times, I'm no longer calling because I have a physical situation. I cannot travel like I did, but I called for 40 years. I started dancing in '77. I learned to call in '81 when I lived in Sacramento. Then I also was my real job. I was a school custodian at a K-6. So there was a teacher that taught square dancing to his 6th grade kids with the new Solomon Levi. Oh boy. And he was all by memory stuff there. And I was just learning to call him. I asked Mr. Taylor, I said, would you mind if I could come in and teach your kids, and I came in